I'm Jim,
And I'm Garrett.
and this is
Jim
Jim
and
and Garrett
Garrett
at the
at the movies.
movies. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Jim and Garrett at the movies. We will be just doing a quick review of the latest comedy by Olivia Wilde, directed by Olivia Wilde, called Booksmart. It's a teen comedy starring Caitlin Dever, Beanie Feldstein, Jessica Williams, Jason Sudeikis, and Lisa Kudrow and Will Forte round out the adult cast. This is the story of two overachieving high school students who set out on one night to experience all of the fun of high school. And of course, hijinks and shit ensues. What did you this is a non-spoiler review, so I won't talk about some of the elements of this film, but overall, Garrett, what did you think of this movie?
The sort of teen sex comedy, I think, is in some ways a tired genre. It's been done many, many, many times before. But somehow, Olivia Wilde really managed to pull this off. I thought this was a great movie. I thought it was funny. It had the appropriate balance of comedy and sentimentality. I thought the cast was fantastic. It managed to sort of play into some of the tropes of both high school movies in general and also sort of the teen sex comedy in particular, but also managed to subvert a fair number of them as well. It's not a flawless film. There's maybe some problems here and there with the pacing somewhat, but overall, I thought this one worked. This is one of the better movies of its genre in quite some time, and I gotta say, not at all what I was expecting from Olivia Wilde's directorial debut. I would have pegged her more for sort of a more straightforward drama film, given her CV and the sorts of films she's starred in the past. So I'm really pleased to have this one sort of christen her, and I'm looking forward to what she does next.
Yeah, she's directed a few shorts, but this is her feature-length debut, and I think it's a really assured directorial hand. Like she knows exactly where to move the camera. She knows exactly how to. I think this is exactly the movie that she wanted to make. Now that said, I think the movie is a bit scattershot in the sense that I feel like literally every idea that every person had ever had somehow made it into the movie. Like this was almost as though, and this is not a spoiler since it was in the trailer, but it was just almost as though that Key and Peele sketch where he goes, "It's in the movie, Electric Gremlin. It's in the movie. Make the girls into dolls. That's in the movie. The girls take drugs. That's in the movie." On and on and on. And so I thought that aside from that being the story being a little bit scattershot and lacking a bit of cohesion, overall, I agree with you. I think it was a fantastic movie. I laughed a lot. I thought that the two leads were absolutely charming and delightful. I thought they carried the movie really quite well. Beanie Feldstein has to do a lot of the comedic heavy lifting, whereas Caitlin Dever is the kind of the straight person, so to speak, and fair. She has to carry that, and I think both of them perform that function really well. I really like this movie. I've got some issues with it here and there, but overall, I think it's a good film.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the on-screen chemistry, I was completely sold on the friendship. I really believe
Mhm.
that these two characters were all longtime friends. They had sort of a repartee and a rhythm between about them that felt like it was sincere. And it reminded me of great friendships I've had, and not without a certain amount of nostalgic longing for high school times, which of course these movies are always sort of striving for, and they're often hit or miss, and this one hits.
Well, yeah, I have no nostalgia for high school at all. I'm glad it's over, but so it didn't really hit me there. I think that what I really liked about this was some of the creative choices made by the actresses. This is a These are really good performances, just period, end of story. Not just good performances for young actors. These are straight good performances. And one of the choices, I can't really give too much about this, but there's an argument at one stage between the two actors. between the two characters, and the camera goes back and forth between the two actors as they're having this argument. It's a one shot, and the look on one of the characters' faces is it's not anger and it's not sadness, it's fear. She fears that this relationship is imperiled, and I think that's a beautiful, wonderful choice. I think that's I the natural inclination is to play that scene angry, and yet she chooses to play a different emotion that adds a whole other a whole other element to the relationship and to her performances as a whole. And so I wanted to call out that moment as why really good creative work is about choosing and about the impact of those choices on the overall interpretation of the character. And I think it works really well.
And it was a hell of a long shot too. I mean, I actually, I can't. I was noticing it might have been two separate shots, or it might have been one continuous shot. I didn't notice a break, but leading up to that scene, there's a serious walk through several different rooms and some interesting camera pans. So if that was all one single shot, it's a very impressive long shot.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it isn't, even if it is two separate shots, then it's two separate impressive long shots.
And that's what I'm talking about when I say that Olivia Wilde is a assured and confident director. She knows exactly what she wants out of these scenes. She knows exactly what she wants out of these actors, and so I really like her directorial style. I think she's a really good director. I have, I've already talked about how the film it lacks a bit of cohesion. I think some of the supporting characters kind of fall into stereotypes. I think that there are some moments in the film that are played off as comedy that aren't actually, like, if you spend some time thinking about it, they're not really that funny. And in fact, kind of tough to justify. But overall, that doesn't mean that I don't think it's a good film. So yeah. Do you have anything else you want to?
Yeah, I think that the stereotypes thing. I think that again, one of the things I rather liked about it, and to my mind, it sort of it echoed back to the first the 21 Jump Street remake, where it was consciously aware of the stereotypes and plays into them only for a little bit, and then I think deliberately tried to sort of go back and subvert them and to undermine them. And I thought that was the right way to handle it, both because it was, it was a nice little sort of subversion of expectations. You think it's going to go in a more cliche fashion, but it actually ends up showing the characters to be a little more robust than you sort of imagine them to be. It tackles some of the gravity and seriousness of the emotions in high school, but also sort of shows how they can be easily distorted by misperceptions. You think you know the people you go to school with. You think you got them pegged, and then you realize that actually they're not quite who you thought they were. And that was something of a theme throughout the film, and I thought it was executed well on both levels, both because that's a revelation for the characters as they discover they don't really know who the people they've been going to school with all this time that they thought they did, but also you sort of go along that journey with them, and you sort of you have this revelation. I mean, revelation may be too strong a word, but you have this recognition that, yeah, you probably stereotyped this character as that too. You probably put him in that little box, that little peg, but they actually don't quite belong there. And I think that's a nice emotional note to hit, both for the character and that Olivia Wilde is able to convey that to the audience and have, or for me at least, to have that emotional journey along with the character. So I thought that was rather nice.
Yeah, and I see what you're talking about too. The specific instances where that takes place, which obviously we won't get into specifics because of spoilers. But yeah, I like a lot of the scenes that you're talking about. The scenes that you're talking about are that relate to that kind of subversion of expectations. I think those scenes work particularly well. I yeah, I'm in agreement with you about that point as well. What anything else about this film that you liked or
Yeah.
didn't like?
Well, I guess I said minor sort of complaint about the pacing. I felt that the second act, it felt like it was sort of going through a number of motions, you know, like we knew they had to get to a certain point by a certain point in the film, but they couldn't just go there. So they had to sort of, you know, encounter certain sort of rather obvious obstacles, and the obvious obstacles had to play out over a certain period of time, and then they had to overcome those obstacles in a certain number of ways. And it was a little obvious based on the elements that they had set up in the past how they were going to overcome each of these obstacles. So the second act felt a little bit like it was treading water, because they needed to flesh out the characters and the relationships a little bit more, but they didn't really have a plot to carry it along with. So they ended up, in some ways, not really going anywhere. But that's a pretty minor critique as far as it goes, because the character development that happens in that period actually is worthwhile, and again, it deepens the relationship between the main characters, and you start to reveal some of the secondary characters as being more complex than you imagine too. So even though the plot stalls out a little bit, the character development sort of compensates for that.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that especially your complaints about the plot, like I felt that pacing issues, but I also was I ended up being so attached to these characters. It took me a while to be attached to these characters, really. It and that's probably more about me than it is about the film. Um, but once I did get attached, I kind of enjoyed going on this ride with them. I kind of figured a lot of the reveals that this film seems to have. I figured those out fairly easily, so they didn't really have much. And I also want to talk briefly about the trailer, because I think the trailer uses scenes from the third act and uses scenes from some of the reveals that I think would have been the film would have been better served had I not seen what I saw in the trailer. But overall, Booksmart, you look great. You're just killing it tonight, Booksmart. You look wonderful. I am standing in awe of you right now, Booksmart. And if you've seen the movie, you get that joke. All right, what do you give this? What do you give this movie out of 5?
4 out of 5.
You give it 4 out of 5. I'm 3.5 out of 5. So still a recommend. Okay, so this is a kind of a shortened show for us tonight. But we will be back with a full show with a review, a movie club, and news item next week. Next Tuesday. Next Tuesday is June 4th, so we will definitely be back with a full show. We'll be reviewing Rocket Man. Join our movie club where we'll be talking about Walk the Line, which we're pairing with Rocket Man. We'll see how that comparison works out, and then whatever news happens between the week. Until then, my name is Jim.
And I'm Garrett.
And this has been
Jim
Jim
and
and
Garrett
Garrett at the movies. Good night.